My name is Daisuke Marichi from United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, ESCAP. So I'm just going to quickly go through what ESCAP can offer in the context of early warnings for all. I want to touch on both what we do in-house and also what we do through trust fund that's hosted at ESCAP. So quick introduction, we do mainly three things. We do thought leadership, that's basically meetings and conferences. Thought leadership, that's mostly on the research and publications, and intergovernmental support, that's basically meetings. Technical assistance, and that's more related to early warnings for all. So in terms of thought leadership, we have our flagship publications called Asia Pacific Disaster Report. That's one of the few flagship publications of ESCAP, and we have all the statistics in terms of climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So I think our sub-regional report for Southeast Asia is going to be published later this year, but it has all those statistics in terms of the total number of people affected from disasters. Like I mentioned, storms and floods are very much dominant. But we also try to look into the economic perspective of it. So on your right-hand side, we have average annual loss. We do that in absolute terms in US dollar, but also as percentage of GDP. So Southeast Asia is an interesting country. They basically lose about 1.7 to 1.8% of GDP annually. And it slightly gets worse as the climate change evolves. We also show some of the adaptation costs to sort of mitigate those damages. So as I mentioned in the morning, as ESCAP, Economic and Social Commission, we really go deep into the economic and social perspective of climate change adaptation in DRR. In terms of intergovernmental support, we have something called Committee on Disaster Risk Reduction. This happens every other year. So the last one was in 2023. This is basically the platform where all the member states, 53 member states from the Asia Pacific region, get together, discuss all the pertinent topics of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. And at the end of the committee, usually there's like a diplomatic negotiation, and they come up with something called resolution, which mandates ESCAP to do something. So this is basically a list of mandates that we got from those 53 member states, basically request us to extend some support in terms of early warning system in the region. And so this, on this note, it's very important. There's one thing that I really want to focus, which is what we call regional learning platform. This is a one-day workshop which happens during the week of the committee. So last year we focused the entire workshop on early warning for all initiatives. So we invited all the global pillars, the 4 pillars. We have dedicated session for each pillar and with all the stakeholders. This has been generously supported and co-hosted by the UK Met. I think this came originally from the predecessor of the WISER program, but it's been made possible due to the support from the UK Met. So here I just want to focus that in committees like this, and this is titled as disaster risk reduction. So a lot of people are coming from the foreign ministry, sometimes NDMO, but we really want to have more voice from the hydromech community as well, because it's really the core part of the issues that we discuss. So in terms of technical assistance, those are the things that we do in-house. So we focus on Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, disaster risk knowledge and forecasting and observation. There's a lot written here, but I think our core expertise is basically to have, on one hand, we have what we call hazard layers. So those could be climate projection of something, various hazards, could be a forecasting data. So those are the hazard data, a layer. And on the other hand, we have exposure layer, which is obviously all the agriculture production, population, infrastructure, you name it. And our expertise really comes in the point where we overlay those two to estimate the impact, and also we can quantify the impact. So for Pillar 1, and all those things that we do is available on the ESCAP Risk and Resilience portal. I have the QR code on the last slide, so you can just take a you can get access to the portal. So just to show what we're doing, so this is for Cambodia. This is just a sample that we created using existing database. So we take the climate projection model from CMIP 6, and we basically present what's happening with the flood in terms of the current climate situation and what happens in our worst case scenario. This is which is SSP 585. So we can visualize and quantify the impacts of floods under different climate scenario. This is at 100-meter resolutions, and those red dots are basically the locations of the power plants. So you see that which power plants will have more risks in terms of the climate change. And so this is just sample, as I mentioned, but for Cambodia, we're doing this for other variables and hazards at their request. So another thing we do is impact-based forecasting using seasonal forecasts. So ESCAP has been invited to ASEAN COF, especially for the user section, and I think we've been asked to lead the user section simply because we do this. So at the ASEAN COF, as you know very well, they always come up with the consensus outlook, and we take those seasonal forecasting data, and again, our expertise is to overlay with exposure data. So in this case, this is for Cambodia. This is a little bit old one, but for DJF 2024, we know how much of agriculture production will be exposed to above normal precipitation, and we can quantify that. And I think our strength is that we can customize those tools. So when we go to specific countries and say we can do impact-based forecasting, this is from the consensus outlook, and the resolution is not very good, and it's probabilistic and stuff. But if countries have their own forecasting data which they want to use for impact-based forecasting, we can take that. And also, I think this is the point that I was making in the morning. This is just agriculture production, but some countries want corn, some countries want rice. Very specific exposure. The interesting example is that we are also working in Central Asia, and they said for exposure layer, they want to map out the facilities that they use. It's called tailing management facility. This is basically all the residuals after they extract all the minerals and metals, and they keep it. They have some spots in the country where they keep all those things. But if those areas being flooded and go into the rivers and stuff like that, then it has a really strong environmental implications. So this is just a good example of how customizable this tool is. And another thing we do in terms of impact-based forecasting is that we have a partnership with Google, and they have a so-called Google Flat Hub, which is basically a 5-day flat forecast using AI models. And again, our expertise is really to overlay that with the exposure layer. So Flat will have the comparative advantage. There's several comparative advantages, but it's AI-driven models, which leads to accuracy. And there's a real-time adaptability. They update obviously daily. But I think the last bullet point is a very good advantage, which is that I think in this region and some other parts of the Asia Pacific, the problem is, especially for flat forecasting, is the gauges. Some basins are not really gauged, or even with the gauges, there's an issue of quality and stuff like that. But because Google Flat is based on AI model, they can infer from data-rich locations to data-scarce locations, thereby allowing us to sort of bypass some of the issues related to gauges. So that's what we've been doing. And other supports, so like I mentioned, we've been working with ASEAN COF very closely. It's not just ASEAN COF, we've been working with SASCOF in Southeast Asia, we've been working with NIACOF, and recently we are working more with Third Pole because they just launched a Climate Outlook Forum with own unique challenges. So for this one, ASEAN COF, I mentioned that we are now, for example, allowing them to estimate the impact on rice crops. And we have all those countries covered, and we can sort of tell how much of those agricultural production will be affected because of the seasonal forecasting. So another thing we do with WMO is that there's ESCAP WMO Typhoon Committee, which I think is familiar to a lot of you. So that was established under the auspices of ESCAP and WMO. The mission is basically to integrate and enhance regional activities of members and basically to reduce and mitigate the loss of lives due to typhoons and some related disasters. So the last part I really wanted to focus is this ESCAP Multi-Donor Trust Fund for Tsunami Disaster Climate Preparedness. So far my presentation has been really focused on what ESCAP can do using our own funding. So we have been doing this for many of the pilot countries in Asia Pacific region, but trust fund has a completely different business model. So what it is that literally that's a trust fund. So we raise funds from the member states and some of the other organizations, and we pool those resources in a trust fund. And we basically allocate those funding to the projects that we think are very helpful or useful in mitigating damages or avoiding or forecasting damages from tsunami and disaster and climate preparedness. So this was created due to the Indian Ocean tsunami back in 2005. So there's been 20 years of operations. And we have supported 31 projects in 23 countries, and we've been dispersed about $50 million so far. Just to highlight some of the flagship initiatives of the trust fund. One thing is that so we allocate 3.4 million for regional integrated multi-hazard early warning system for Africa and Asia, RIMES. RIMES has been doing a lot of great initiatives and projects, but we basically provided the seed funding for RIMES to really be established and up and running for their projects. And obviously they have been contributing a lot for the early warning for countries, so they provided support for all the 11 of the early warning for all countries. So this is one of the ways, one of the channels through which ESCAP is trying to contribute to early warning for all initiative. But also, so I mentioned about the Regional Climate Outlook Forum, but Trust Fund has been trying to encourage the countries to establish the National Climate Outlook Forums. Those are very helpful, and there has been several National Climate Outlook Forums that has been established due to the support from the Trust Fund. And obviously, because this is from the Indian Ocean tsunami, we have been supporting operationalization of the Indian Ocean tsunami early warning systems. We have been doing some work on SSOP. There is so many, as it shows, we basically support through all those 4 pillars of the early warnings for all and early warning value chain. So here, I think my message is that if there are any projects that you think is very helpful to support early warning for all, or something else which is happening in your country or some other countries, and if you think that Trust Fund could be a good vehicle to do that, please let me know or let someone know from ESCAP, and we'll be happy to see if that can be funded and supported through the Trust Fund. But also, we are always trying to find donors for the Trust Fund. So we periodically or occasionally replenish our Trust Fund, but obviously more resources is better. So we're reaching out to a lot of countries, actually in this region as well, to try to support the activities of the Trust Fund. So we're also looking for looking for both the projects and also the donors who can support Trust Fund. So that's it. ESCAP itself has, particularly in Pillar 1 and in Pillar 2, a lot of things that we can offer. And our approach has been really demand-driven. So whenever we go to countries, we say, those are the list of things that we can do. But we're not going to impose anything. So if there's anything that might be helpful for your countries or regions, or if you know someone who need that kind of help, do let us know, and we'll be happy to really focus on that and customize it to the extent possible. And again, on Trust Fund, that's also another channel through which we can support a lot of projects and countries. So again, if that's something, if that's a platform that could be really helpful for your countries or someone please do reach out to me, and I'll be happy to give more details. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Daisuke, and showcasing this great collaboration that our 2 agencies have. We just have renewed our memorandum of understanding. It's about to be signed, but it's a great collaboration, and ESCAP is really our 5th pillar lead, so to say, in the Early Warning for All initiative in the region. And you already mentioned RIMES, the representative will be on the panel tomorrow, but you also mentioned the UK Met Office as a big supporter in the region. So, which leads me to the next speaker. And so I have the pleasure to introduce David Corbelli, who is the Senior International Development Manager at the UK Met Office, and he's responsible for the UK Met Office's relations and partnerships across Asia Pacific, and he will introduce the Weather and Climate Services Information Program, WISER. Over to you. Thank you.
Is the mic on? Oh, hang on, let me just adjust that. Thank you very much for the introduction, Jacques, and thank you very much to the organisers for the opportunity to talk at this event. It's a great pleasure and honour. And ladies and gentlemen, nice to see you all. The Met Office, as mentioned, has a long-standing history of collaboration in Southeast Asia. Research, services, development, with many of the Met services here, many of the national governments, many of the regional organisations and donors. What I want to talk to you about is a relatively new programme called Weather and Climate Services Asia and Pacific, which, if I could summarise the talk, is a regional collaboration and capacity building programme that's at a relatively early stage. It's a long-term programme. And noting Professor Barker's sum up of yesterday's discussions this morning about taking the challenges, opportunities, and needs identified at this forum and translating them into some form of action plan, I hope that WISER can contribute to realisation and delivery some of those actions going forwards. So what is WISER? WISER is a portfolio of programmes funded by UK government that supports generation uptake of co-produced weather and climate services to support better decision-making, improved resilience to extreme weather and climate extremes at local, national and regional levels for a range of users. We heard in the opening remarks by Professor Saulo yesterday the importance of co-development and co-production, and that's been reiterated in some of the panel discussions earlier. So we have a portfolio of programmes. WISER Africa is in its third phase and has been operating since about 2015. We have one called WISER MENA, Middle East and North Africa, and we have the WISER Asia Pacific programme. All of these programmes are linked to parent UK government initiatives that are larger and wider and more overarching. So WISER Asia Pacific, and I always don't like bombarding people with lots of new acronyms, but Climate Action for Resilience Asia is managed by the UK government's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. It runs for 9 years and is a £274 million investment to improve the resilience of economies, vulnerable communities to climate change, improve the natural environment, improve weather forecasting services across South Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific region. And you can see from this diagram it's multi-thematic, multi-partnership and multi-programmatic. So there's several partners. UNDP are leading a client finance network, Asian Development Bank are managing some trust funds for urban and community resilience. World Bank and an organisation called ICIMOD in Southeast Asia are looking at nature-based solutions landscapes. But I'm here to talk about Weather and Climate Services Asia Pacific. So, what is it? The observant of you might have noticed that WISER Asia Pacific runs from 2022 to 2031. Currently has an £18 million budget. I would state that I'm positive that the funding will increase over time, and I would like to point out that we're making considerable efforts to coordinate with other donors. And I just wanted to raise the importance of the challenges and opportunities around donor investment across all the issues we've discussed so far. And I haven't heard I just wanted to make that point about donor investment because I'm not sure it's been raised explicitly here. WISER Asia Pacific. The objective is to improve quality, access, use of weather and climate information services to strengthen the resilience of vulnerable people. We have a range of principles under the WISER family of programmes. It is to deliver change, ideally transformational and sustainable change. We take a regional approach. Co-production, co-development is at the heart of ensuring services are accessible and, more importantly, actionable by end users. Big focus on vulnerability, gender, equity, disability, social inclusion, and very much a partnership approach. We're developing active partnerships. We undertook a scoping study in 2022, early 23, and that really identified 4 key themes for the programme to focus on. 1, enhancing or supporting improving the capability of information providers to disseminate user-orientated weather and climate services, Met services, regional centres, so on and so forth. To support regional coordination, cooperation and capacity building. Big focus on impact-based forecasting and ensuring services reach and improve livelihoods for vulnerable sectors and communities. And where possible, supporting and informing wider planning and policy and adaptation policy. I'll give you an example of that latter one. We collaborate with World Food Programme and have a methodology where we do climate food security assessments that informs World Food Programme national programming, but also supports as a tool to influence ministries of finance and other ministries for adaptation planning. How's WISER delivered? Okay, well, I expect WISER to support global initiatives, such as Early Warning for All. A big focus is developing regional partnerships. And then in terms of finances, we have a range of granting mechanisms, large grants, small grants, and a key focus is technical assistance from the Met Office and its networks of partners. And partners are wide and varied. RHYMES, World Food Programme, IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross, so on and so forth. I won't mention the areas underneath, we've talked about that, but monitoring, evaluation and learning and ensuring sustainable approaches is key. So after the scoping study, we went into a design phase, and this is really a brief outline of the programme. I'm not going to go into every little detail on this, but let's just look at the first area there, supporting global and regional initiatives. We helped establish the ESCAP Regional Learning Platform. We helped leverage that platform to look at what Early Warning for All meant for the region, and we continue to collaborate with ESCAP on that. I also hope that some of the practical interventions from WISER contribute to enhancing or increasing coverage of early warning. The other point I wanted to make is we've got 3 principal regional partnerships, one in South Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific region. South Asia focuses on supporting something called the South Asia Hydromet Forum. That's a principal regional collaboration mechanism for weather and climate services. It has 9 member states and an executive council comprised of the DGs of all the Met services. It's been running for 4 years or 5. It has working groups on NWP, impact-based forecasting, observations, and it is now seeking to enrich and deepen and expand in its role to include disaster community, private sector, so on and so forth. WISER will support the impact-based forecasting and climate services components of SAF. We've heard about the Pacific and the weather-ready decadal plan of investment. WISER is contributing directly to priorities under that. And the week after next, I'll be going to the Pacific Meteorological Council to look at the next steps of what we can support there. In Southeast Asia, it was recommended that we support and link the range of ASEAN frameworks, networks and mechanisms for disaster risk reduction and climate resilience. So we've got some of these illustrated. The ADMER action plan, the AHA Centre's work plan, the framework on anticipatory action. We know there's plenty more frameworks and mechanisms, and Dr. Margaret presented many of those yesterday, so this is just to illustrate an entry point. And what are we doing at the moment and looking to do in Southeast Asia? Well, we've had a dialogue with the ASEAN Humanitarian Assistance, AHA Centre, to look at how we can support their capacity for developing and impact-based forecasting and engaging and increasing the capacity of national disaster management agencies. We've been engaging with Met services in the region, 5 minutes, thank you, to look at how we can develop a common regional approach for impact-based forecasting. We've also reviewed the severe weather forecasting programme in South Asia, Southeast and the Pacific to see what stakeholders and users have identified as areas for improvement or how they can be enhanced. And we've also been talking to WMO about supporting a new SWFP in Southeast Asia, Oceania. Working with ASMC to support the ASEAN Climate Outlook Forum, and we have developed some national, regional climate projections that hopefully contribute the Singapore V3 projections, and we've been collaborating to ensure those data sets are synergistic and compatible, and supporting national climate projections in Vietnam. Now, the thing I really wanted to talk to you about was this area, impact-based forecasting, and some approaches that we've been developing in South Asia, in Africa, and it's something I wanted to present for thought and to put to this group today as well, in terms of what we've been doing. So we've been developing a regional framework or toolkit approach for impact-based forecasting. And when I talk about impact-based forecasting, I know we've got NWP in the forecast, but I'm talking about linking that to exposure, vulnerability, impact information, and engaging with stakeholders to understand what those impacts are and what the actions are needed to take in response to those impacts, and to ensure there's feedback mechanisms to ensure that the impact-based forecasting is having an impact and can be continuously improved. So this is where I really needed a pointer, which isn't available, so I'm going to switch to the mic. The toolkit approach, which I'll just simply present, is about developing a toolkit with some common resources, training materials, case studies, best practice, additional resources, technical resource from organisations, and then developing that toolkit through a regional approach, working with both Met services that are mandated regional centres, and we've been talking to ASMC, Pegasi, BMKG, Met Malaysia, Vietnamese Met Service so far, but also making sure we've got representatives of users, and for example, the AHA Centre is a representative of the national disaster management community. Testing the toolkit by providing training, collaboration, capacity building through regional workshops, encouraging piloting in countries on a common hazard. So for example, in South Asia, we were looking at piloting approaches on heat and heat health, which was identified. But likewise, that could be applied to a nation's own priority or hazard and fed back into the system. And then the second part is really about training of trainers and then ensure that there's owners to actually ensure that organisations have their capabilities to sustain, train staff, and act as champions and develop communities of practice. I think my time's nearly up, but just looking at this from a slightly different lens. So we've got the standardised approach for the toolkit, which is adaptable to different regions, but also it should be applicable to different warning services, different sectors, have the ability to be upscaled, look at different hazards, and in time, as mentioned, maybe bring in and link to other timescales. Professor Hewitt mentioned the importance of linking seasonal to weather and so on and so forth. Pilot-led action-based forecasting approaches, perhaps looking at different geographies, different hazards or different environments, and then bringing that back together to share and develop regional learning, capacity building, so on and so forth. Ultimately, supporting improved national action-led early warning systems and perhaps informing a common approach to transboundary hazards as well. Information made available for the public, and then there would be a range of benefits, strengthening regional capabilities of both producers and users, and ensuring it's sustained through ongoing development, delivery, and indeed support from the WISER programme. I think this just reiterates the benefits of this sort of approach, support to national Met services, but also support to user agencies, peer-to-peer knowledge sharing across the region and indeed other regions, access to lots of tools, resources, learning, so on and so forth, increased capacity of agencies to train their own staff and improve their own capacity, and a common framework for addressing transboundary hazards or regional hazards, and indeed greater connectivity across stakeholders. So that's just to illustrate an approach that we've been developing, and I'd just like to point out that it's adaptable and really something that would be developed and owned by the region with support from the programme. I think my time's up. This was really just to explain that we have been supporting with ISMC, RIMES and DMH in Laos the last in-person ASEAN COF meeting, which is in May, and supporting the virtual meeting in November before. We've got ongoing discussions about how that can be supported and enhanced going forwards. And I said we'd provided and developed some regional climate projections for Southeast Asia. They match the Codex domain, downscaling 3 CMIP6 models, coordinating closely with Codex and colleagues at CCRS to ensure that data sets are complementary and synergistic. And now we're starting to discuss how we can collaborate around translating and communicating new climate information to stakeholders. So I've covered quite a lot there, and please reach out to me if you'd like any further information and to discuss further. As I said, we've got an ongoing dialogue with many of you in the room, but great to have this wider audience just to raise awareness and promote the programme going forwards. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you to the UK Met Office for really this long-standing partnership with WMO and all the support you're providing to the members, really as a driving force for the impact-based forecasting, the development of this. And I think it's especially exciting to see that you're able, or already in discussion with these different ASEAN bodies, in addition to the ASEAN member states, which is really aligned with what we're discussing today and tomorrow. How can we scale up this to other ASEAN member states, and what is the role of the ASEAN Secretariat and its committees to support this? So this was an example of a bilateral donor, plus the technical assistance that comes with it. Now I would like to invite Mr. John Harding. He's the head of the Climate Risk and Early Warning Systems Initiative Secretariat, which is hosted at the WMO Secretariat in Geneva, and which is really the dedicated trust fund for early warning system support. And he has worked with UNDRR before and the World Bank, and he will tell us a bit about the initiative and what it has been supporting in Southeast Asia especially. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Joren, and good morning to all of you. I say good morning just to reflect the fact I'm a little jet lagged, so, and I know many of you, especially the meteorological colleagues, normally you come to Geneva for a lot of the meetings, so it's my turn now to suffer from jet lag coming to visit you here in Asia. So I'd really like to thank also WMO and ASEAN for this workshop. It's been some really excellent presentations. There's been quite a lot of presentations, I'm aware, but I must say I found them really, really interesting. It's really useful to be here. And I've been asked by the organizers to say just a few words about the financing aspect of early warning for all. So I currently manage a trust fund, which is called the Climate Risk and Early Warning Systems CRUISE Initiative. It's a financing mechanism that's relatively new. It's administered by the World Bank. It's a number of countries, 12 countries contribute to this trust fund, and it's completely dedicated to early warning. And actually, as part of the Early Warning for All executive plan, they've identified a number of financing mechanisms. The CRUISE is one of them. SOF, the Systematic Observation Financing Facility, is another that I'll mention, which we've been tasked to help support the financing of this initiative, in particular in least developed countries and small island developing states. And CRUISE, compared to other climate funds, we're a relatively small financing mechanism, so we have a portfolio of approximately $200 million, but we're completely dedicated to the topic, specialized in the topic of early warning, and I'll explain how we currently function and how you can access CRUISE resources. So when we're talking about early warning financing, we have a number of challenges that we see in many of these financing mechanisms. And one in particular you'll be all very familiar with is every time we engage in any one of the countries that we work with, there's always multiplicity. There are always many different financing mechanisms in place, not always as aligned as we would like to see them. And this is obviously one of our biggest challenges on the early warning for all now, is to ensure alignment and coordination between different financing mechanisms. We're also quite challenged when we look at the types of services that we develop and that we finance in ensuring that they are sustained over time. So we know the kind of capacities that we develop are then picked up and supported and financed through typically public financing in the countries. And this is something that has already come up from my previous interventions, not mine, but by my colleagues, is this notion of financing the whole value chain of early warning systems. So currently a lot of the financing is certainly perceived as a bias towards more infrastructure investments, and we would like to see more investments into the early action, last mile components of this portfolio. So some of the lessons that we have from Cruise on how to address these challenges. So first of all, we, similar to the trust fund that's set up under ESCAP, we make sure that we're able to support requests by governments that relate to all components of the early warning value chain. We try and have more standard approaches to help you identify what your priority needs are. This can be challenging, depending on which institution even you'll talk to within a national setting. The early warning priorities will be quite different. So if we don't have a mechanism to engage at the country level, which engages all the stakeholders and all the partners, it's sometimes difficult for us to get an idea of those national priorities that need funding. And one of our lessons that we have also is the need to support some of what we call the basic foundational elements of an early warning system. So the basic institutional capacities, the legal frameworks, the national strategies and plan development, that also requires resources and financing, and that's something we're quite keen to also be able to support. And finally, the last point is this need to be able to support the mutualization of services. I think Professor Barker said it very, very well. Not every single country needs to develop a supercomputer to be able to predict the weather. There's a number of these services and capacities that can be aggregated. So one country within a region can provide that service to a group of countries within the region. And that is obviously a very effective, cost-effective way of going about our business. So for us, from a financing perspective, it means that we should be able to not only support your national capacities, but we should also be able to support these regional centers that get developed. And that's something that's quite important for us. And I think this is a reflection of, we hear a lot rhetorically, especially in these kind of meetings, there's always a very strong commitment to this last mile component of the early warning value chain. However, when we sit down with you, when we sit down with national authorities to understand what your priorities are, in particular when we're talking to meteorological services who have a higher upstream investment requirements, in particular in infrastructure, it's very hard for us to be able to also identify activities and institutions to which we can work to support that, to make sure that we're supporting this last mile component. And actually, if we look at where our money is going, it's still a very small amount going towards that last mile. So we work a lot more now. We're trying to work more with humanitarian partners, response agencies around this anticipatory action agenda. We're going to have an agreement now with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies that allows us to be able to directly fund your national Red Cross or Red Crescent societies within the region. But these are some of the things that we're trying to do to ensure that we're able to better finance this component of the work. So basically, this is a reflection of how our financing works. It's always driven by the needs of the countries. Here on your right, you can see that we can finance technical assistance, capacity building, related to the 4 pillars of early warning. But in addition to that technical assistance, we also are keen to be able to sort what we see as cross-cutting issues, so the development of these policies, strategies, and institutional support. And then we have a number of principles that drive across all our financing, need for much more people-centered approaches. One of the aspects around, and I think this is also been very strongly pushed forward in these kind of forums, the recognition that women leadership, gender-responsive early warning systems is very important. So that we see as something that it cuts across all the pillars of the work. So it's not something that we see as a standalone aspect. So how can you access the cruise financing? We have 3 modalities. So we have a multi-year projects, and this, as I say, can be both national, country-driven, or at a regional level. We have a mechanism which is called an accelerated support window. It's a recognition that sometimes you have some immediate needs for technical assistance or expert advisory services or assessments that you need to do. And particularly with regard to, you may want to be able to access some larger financing from World Bank or other institutions, and this can help you to do the required groundwork to access this additional financing. So this is something that we try and respond to requests on a very short time frame. So it's a low maintenance, low type of a request. You can access up to $250,000, and we try and respond within 5 weeks of receiving the request. And finally, we have a partnership with the Green Climate Fund. We call it a scaling up framework. It basically, we're for countries that have successfully developed cruise programs, you have a facilitated access then to GCF programs. It basically de-risks the GCF operations. And for those of you who've been involved in trying to access GCF funds, you know how complicated it can be. It can also take a long time, 2-3 years. And through the scaling up framework, again, we are able to respond much more rapidly and allow these additional access to these additional financing of up to 25 million. And we have colleagues here in the country, our colleagues from Cambodia are one of the countries which is now looking to access this scaling up framework of the GCF. And by the way, if you're looking for a very good example of a GCF project, from the project development all the way to implementation, the project that was presented by our colleague from the Philippines is one of the very best examples there. And so it's something you can look into. Is our colleagues at the GCF always refer to your program, Madame, as one of the very good successful stories. This is just another way of reflecting these different financing mechanisms that you have. I included here also the funds that are available through the Systematic Observation Financing Facility to finance both what we call the readiness phase, so the mapping of your needs when it comes to basic observation networks. And then there's also an investment phase in the Systematic Observation Financing Facility where you can access funds to both access automatic weather stations, but also for the maintenance of those weather stations. I don't have a slide, unfortunately, to show our portfolio just for the ASEAN, so I've got one that shows our portfolio across Asia Pacific. As you can see, in the ASEAN region, we're mainly working with Laos and Cambodia. We have a project in those countries for 5 million that has recently been increased by an additional 7 million. And we have approximately a 20 million program in the Pacific region. And finally, just a quick word around measuring success. When you talk about financing, we tend to finance things that we can measure, we can show the impact of. And I think this is a collective challenge for all of us still when it comes to early warning. To show the effectiveness of our investments, we tie in all our monitoring and evaluation we do, we tie it in with these global goals and targets, and we heard from our colleague from UNDRR on the importance of Target G under the Sendai framework. So for us to be able to measure the effectiveness of our investments, we need you, the countries, to be able to be continuously measuring the effectiveness of your national systems and using these global targets. And that's something we're obviously prepared to help to support. It's still a challenge. We know, for example, meteorological organizations, the more advanced ones will tend to report back as a public funded institution on the accuracy and timeliness of your predictions, but rarely go beyond that into saying, okay, did those predictions actually result in a certain number of lives saved, for example. So we're trying to push towards a more an approach in countries to look at the effectiveness of the early warning systems based on this notion of access, so how many people access the services that you're developing, and of course, ultimately, that results in a number of lives or livelihoods saved, which is the target A of Sendai, by the way. And this, by the way, in the context of the Early Warning for All initiative, this has really helped us push a lot the understanding and how we measure the effectiveness of early warning systems. And one of the things you can expect to see coming up quite shortly is what we call a maturity index for early warning, which is really going to help set those basic metrics, those basic indicators that we should all, hopefully, that we'll all then use collectively to measure progress when we come to early warning systems. So I think that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you so much. We have a little bit of time for questions, very limited time, and I have 6 questions already. Maybe some of them can be recorded and then brought up again tomorrow, especially during the group exercise, and then also the final panel discussion. But maybe if I can pull up, one of them is whether, for example, the ESCAP Trust Fund, but maybe even the other trust funds or wiser, whether developed countries such as Singapore or Brunei can also access these funding mechanisms. Maybe, Daisuke, if you are able to answer this.
Countries like Brunei. Okay, so we don't have a very specific criteria, but obviously we need to prioritize countries more in need. So, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, but I think it's relatively unlikely that we fund projects like this. So I think our focus has been really on LDCs, almost like cruise, but also we also focus on countries in special situations like SIDS, LDCs, those countries. So yeah, I think overall, I think our principle is that we prioritize those countries in special situations.
Thank you. And then maybe another question for Wiser, and it's very similar to what John showed on his last slide, was how to measure success. Of course, we can measure success in terms of improvement of the skills and the accuracy, but actually measuring in terms of risk reduction and loss reduction. Maybe you can say something to that, Dave.
Yes, of course. So I mean, with Wiser in Asia Pacific, as I said, it's at an early stage of development, but it builds on a previous program that I think was mentioned by our colleagues at ESCAP earlier, called ARC, Asia Regional Resilience to a Changing Climate, where we took that approach and worked with Nepal, Bangladesh and Pakistan to pilot impact-based forecasting approaches and the co-production approach. So we also linked that to working with NGOs working on an anticipatory action and looked at how that forecast reached numbers in affected provinces and to some extent the actions taken, to look at the difference of that system versus the previous system or having no system. The approach has been adopted in Nepal, and they are now using this approach more routinely, at least in the landslide affected provinces where we piloted. Pakistan Met Department have taken this up and now are really taking this forward and applying it more widely to different hazards and pressures. So I don't have a quantification from those pilots of, okay, we've reduced X amount or saved X amount of costs in damages, etc. But there are monitoring and evaluation systems alongside that to look at number of people reached, action taken, and feedback on accuracy and areas for improvement on the forecast as well.
Thank you so much. John, would you like to add something to this question, how to measure? Maybe you can take on this one. Thanks.
So when it comes to measuring the impact of the work, we've, as I mentioned earlier on, we've actually tried to do a shift towards, for every one of the services that we're developing. So for example, if we're working on common alerting protocol or an impact-based forecasting system, or put in place a better prediction tool for a country. So of course we always have one indicator for that specific service. So for CAP we say, okay, how many alerts has the Met Service delivered, or the National Disaster Management Office delivered in a CAP format? So we'll always have, we always try and have some indicator. But what we're trying to push our partners to do now is to link those indicators to a higher level of saying, okay, how many people access that service that has been developed? And that is a real shift in thinking, and actually we get a lot of pushback. People say, the initial reaction is always no, we don't know, it's too complicated to work that out. But actually, no, we're starting to, first of all, because we're getting better at defining what that access notion means. So if we're giving them a flash flood guidance system, how many people live in the area affected by the flash flood? How many of them actually can actually access that warning through a certain communication channel, and so on. So we're developing those definitions of access better, and hopefully collectively we'll start shifting when we're looking at the measuring the effectiveness of early warning systems to the number of people that access those services. As I said, the highest level of a measure of effectiveness in an early warning system, we all know it's a number of lives lost, or i.e. saved by the warning system. But it's those types of trends in loss of life and livelihoods can only be measured on a much longer time frame. So you need a decade of investments in the national system before you can actually show how many, how has it really affected the number of lost and lives, the lives saved and livelihoods. So it's important to maintain that link, but we are suggesting this notion of access, which is in line with the target G of the Sendai framework, as an important metric for measuring the effectiveness of early warning systems.
Thanks a lot, John. And maybe I take one more question and I will try to address it myself. And the other question with the vote there, how did you generate 100 meters climate change protection in Cambodia? Maybe the person who asked this can approach Daisuke directly. I just want to get back to one question, which is about how does Early Warnings for All safeguard sensitive data? And here I would like to say that Early Warnings for All is not an organization, it's not a project, it's really a partnership, or actually a campaign. So it's all of us, it's our organizations, and it's our policies, how we manage the data. So it's maybe a misconception about the initiative that it is a new mechanism with certain policies. So we all work together, and we have a monitoring and evaluation framework, but we don't override any policies that each partner or each country has established. So for WMO, I can say we have our data policies, and that's what we stick to, and UNDRR and their national counterparts, they have theirs as well. So maybe just to clarify that. But I think now I would like to hand over to my director, Ben, to moderate the panel, and I would like to invite the panelists to come on the stage. And while they take their seats, I just want to remind you that there are QR codes on your tables where you can fill out surveys for yesterday, but also for today. I think the organizers here at MSS, they would really appreciate this feedback. And I would also like to invite all the speakers from today to, after the panel discussion, to come to the stage to take a group photo, which would really help with the media attention and the documentation of this event. So if you're ready, I would hand over to Ben Churchill. Your microphone should be on the chair.
Thank you. Well, hello again, everybody. And the first thing you're probably going to notice is my brightly coloured socks. These are a gift from my daughter, who takes great pride in what I do and what you all do to contribute to lives and livelihoods across our community. She's 10 years old and she's already very excited about weather and understands the importance of the work we all do. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'd really like to thank all the panellists, and I'll introduce them in turn, just so we all know who's up on the podium today. But this is really an opportunity to hear from the WMO members and also our partners in the UN system and also outside the UN system that are all contributing to the Early Warnings for All initiative. We really want to understand their perspectives so that we can share that with you, so you have a deeper understanding. My first panellist is Her Excellency Seth Van Areth, and she's the advisor to the Ministry of Water Resources and Meteorology in Cambodia. And she started working at the ministry, if I may say so, in 1984, which says that you have a lot of experience. And she was the previous director of the meteorology department at Mauram, and she is the permanent representative of Cambodia with WMO. Welcome, Your Excellency. Also joining us today is Dr. Varani Sengdianto, if I pronounced that right, I hope, Deputy Director General of Department of Meteorology and Hydrology of the Lao People Democratic Republic, PDR. Along next to Madam is Dr. Luis Rodriguez, is the Thematic Lead Climate and Environmental Crises for IFRC, the International Federation Red Cross Red Crescent Society Asia Pacific Regional Office, based in Kuala Lumpur. Next panellist is Jyothi Ganesh Shanmuga Sundaram, who is joining us from the World Food Programme. He's the Regional Technical Lead on Climate and Weather-Related Risk and PRISM at WFP in the Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific in Bangkok. And last but not least, we have Mr. Sochiat So. He's a Senior Technical Officer at the National Committee for Disaster Management, also at Cambodia. And so on either side of the panel, we have representation from the National Meteorological Hydrological Service, but also the disaster risk reduction side that Sochiat is National Committee for Disaster Management. So it's nice to have that perspective as well, showing that Pillar 1, Pillar 2 working very nicely together on this initiative. So thank you for joining me today. And I am going to watch time very closely because we want to end at 6 o'clock and we have a few housekeeping announcements as well. But we'll start with you, Your Excellency. Could you tell us about your experience with implementing Early Warnings for All in Cambodia? From the beginning, where a rapid assessment was undertaken, all the way through to the national workshops and developing the roadmap. We'd like to understand the value or the potential that you see in this initiative, and also developing the roadmaps. And finally, what advice would you give to fellow ASEAN member states who are interested in joining this initiative?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank to WMO and to government of Singapore and to SSMC that is give me opportunity to join this forum. Very, I think that is a big meeting. Yes, because this part I just missed long time ago. So this is the first time to meet the good meeting and to give me opportunity to say, share the experiences, how we are working under the early warning system. First of all, I would like to say that we start from phase 1 under the CRU project is calling early warning system. So all the first one, we have built up of all the capacity building. So because I think that our country is different from your country, because our country will lack of equipment lack of human resources. And the part of phase 1 of group early warning system is give me a margin to growing up of our human resources, our college understanding more about the, how to predict weather forecast, because we have training, many training. Under the group project, we have impacts of best forecasting. This is the main point for maker do the weather forecast for our nation. So we come from regional to our nation. And also we have understand about sub-to-seasonal forecast. This is the one capacity building of our college to understand how to develop the medium and long range forecast. And another one, we have the training about the medium range, and platform is very important. So my Devatra is, I think that is the new technology, IA. So this is very good. I think this my experiences for learn from the group project. I think that the phase 1 is very nice for us, and we would like to support to phase 2. And the phase 2, we are trying to do assessment many times to have a discussion with stakeholders, and we understand about the potential value we have such as agriculture, and also infrastructure, health, environmental, economy, and so on. And we are all together to find out assessment for the roadmap. So we all collect the data assessment and to do the roadmap for this. It's very important. So, and also we have mitigation strategies. So we part out the early warning system, infrastructure improvement, and the part of agriculture, and also be interesting of the health. This is very, very important for human health. So this is the kind of dissemination we make do the roadmap. But unfortunately, we are the roadmap from Cambodia. We have different from Laos. I think that Laos already final, but Cambodia still review again. It's not finalist. So this is my experiences for the roadmap under the group project. I think that I would like to say very useful, very important for early warning system for all. This is early warning for all, but early warning with us, you know. So for all and with us, because we are operational of the weather forecast. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think it's a very nice summary. Yep, thank you. Round of applause. I think that's really nice for you to open up about your experience and really highlighting the value of being a WMO member, quite honestly, of being able to harness the benefits of a larger community supporting you in terms of downscaling forecasts from global to regional to national level, looking at seasonal to sub-seasonal forecasts. But I really want to commend Cambodia and others that are in the Early Warnings for All initiative for taking an inclusive approach, taking this cross-sectoral, looking at all stakeholders, involving them through the national consultation. I wish you well on finalising the roadmap, but I think you're moving ahead regardless, and I'm sure the approval will come through very soon. So thank you very much. And I want to stick with Cambodia because I think this is a very nice opportunity where we have Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 sitting on the same panel. And very interested to hear from the disaster risk reduction perspective on multi-hazard early warning systems. So a question for Sochiat is, what is your experience in establishing a multi-hazard early warning system in Cambodia, especially with regards to coordinating between all 4 pillars and working particularly with Pillar 2? What works well, but also what can be improved from your perspective?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is Suchit from National Committee Disaster Management Cambodia. Talking about the early warning for all is really new to Cambodia. We have heard about it in 2023 after the Secretary General have announced it. And then it really surprised that they selected National Committee Disaster Management as the representative. And following by that, we have exploring with the development partner. This is our key starting point. And then who will know about this? And then we find out that the World Food Program and other development partners have also interest in supporting us to moving this forward together. And late 2023, we have started up with inception workshop to gathering all the stakeholders to understand who is really in the common interest of the early warning. And then from that starting workshop, we have learned a lot, and also we looking for the some of the way forward and the direction that at that time there is a proposal that the National Committee Disaster Management should having a take opportunity for standing as the coordination platform that can be worked on this area. And then we have another step forward in 2024 early to do the gap analysis workshop, which we identify our capacity in our country and as well as the opportunity that we can moving up for another roadmap. Currently, we are in the process of formulation a roadmap. I know that there is a lot of contribution by the UN representative in our country and as well as the NGO development partner there. And we will soon to be adopted and finalized after we have a cross-check each other. By the way, early warning is not just starting when they're introducing the early warning for all to Cambodia. We have implemented a lot. It's just like we don't use early warning for all, it's just early warning for the people in Cambodia. We have the way in Cambodia that we work is like National Committee Disaster Management is the role to coordinate all the ministry across the country, all the sectors across the country. And Ministry of Water Resource and Meteorology, they do the focus. And then we are doing the educational of the actionable information to the people. When we receive the focus, we will tell our people that what you should do with this focus. And then we use the many channels, use traditional channel by engaging the people from the national to sub-national until the community. They use loudspeaker with a boat machine or that thing. And at the same time, we also use a modern technology that we start to implementation in Cambodian since 2013 that we call EW for All 1294. This is introduced by people in need with the support from some of donors, and now very popular. They also make it more bigger to other countries like Laos and other countries as well. So the 1294 having a role of disseminating the warning that distributed by MORAM, at the same time provide actionable information to the people that they are exposed to that. And we are now trying to boosting for registration for those people that they use mobile phone to register and having received the warning and as well as the actionable information that we provide. So for now, what the roadmap is talking about is how we are working together. This is very important in our roadmap. And we are trying, as the committee that we coordinate, we're trying to find out what is the existing mechanism or platform or system that already exists, how we can work together in a single platform, especially about the challenge of the data sharing from all relevant ministry. The data exists with everyone, but they are not come into one place that we can coordinate and having a very good focus and projection. So I think this is really a small thing that I want to contribute because of the time. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for the explanation, and also thank you for highlighting that it is a cooperative effort. We need to all work together, as Her Excellency mentioned as well, and also that it's not a new initiative. As Jochen Luther said just earlier, you know, we're actually just building on what we've already established. So we're not starting from scratch, and I think that should be acknowledged and recognised, but we're trying to work together better. And so these coordination mechanisms that link all of the pillars together at national level, that they're complemented by the regional effort linking together, I think this is the key. I will just have a quick follow-up question, just for a very quick example from Cambodia, and either you can respond, but can you think of an example, a recent example, past example, how early warning has mitigated the impacts of a hazard, particularly at the community level?
That very simple question, also very simple answer that we have met so far. From the actionable information that we produce after we receive a warning from the from the ministry, we can develop like very simple message to inform to the sector that is really likely affected. For example, like those who are working on the agriculture in the lowland area that they are exposed to the heavy rainfall and also flooded. We can inform them that this is a choice that they can harvest before time, before the water coming. And then for those who are living along the Mekong River, and then we can just tell them that the water will be shouldn't be polluted by the flood, and then the reservation of the water that can be used for the flood season is very good for you. And also for those who are working on the health perspective, they can inform to the public people about what you are going to do in order to protect the health issue happening during the disaster. So a number of mistakes have been developed based on the situation and also using in different location areas. So from the message, some of people that are practiced really minimize the loss and impact of those hazards. And for those who are ignoring, they start to understand that this is the difficult situation, that even those we are the one who are provide the service support for evacuation them, for support them is also difficult to hand-in-hand support, because they are not very prepared and anticipate with our warning.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And community outreach and understanding user needs and how they'll respond to particular messages is very important. I'm just reflecting on the, I wouldn't call it a funny cartoon, but John Harding's presentation had a big siren that was working very well, but the people didn't know what to do. And this is very critical, and this is the very good work that's happening in Cambodia and other countries. I'm now going to turn to one of the Early Warnings for All pillar partners, IFRC, a very important pillar in community preparedness and response to natural hazards. So, Dr. Rodriguez, could you tell us about your experience implementing Early Warnings for All across the region in Asia Pacific, but particularly with a lens through the national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, if you can think of some examples, and what value or potential do you see in the initiative, and what role do you see specifically for IFRC at the regional and national level?
Hello. Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon. So, very simple things is IFRC and the national societies have already a strong record working on early warnings and anticipatory action. We are co-leading the Asia Pacific Anticipatory Action Hub, and we are currently working in 24 of our Asia Pacific countries. So we are now focused and increase our commitment to work in early warning and anticipatory action when there is most needed, especially in least developed countries, small island developing states, and the emerging hazards that people and government are facing, for instance, these climate and health interactions. Early Warning for All is an important program for IFRC. So basically, it is reinforcing our commitment to ensure that people-centered multi-hazard early warnings are available for everyone, in particular for the most vulnerable people, the disadvantaged one, and the marginalized people. So early warnings, we recognize, save lives, protect livelihoods, and save money. For the perspective of the Early Warning for All, the experience of IFRC and the National Society is very simple. No? So we make use of our technical knowledge, our convening power, and our auxiliary role with the government to bring together multiple stakeholders from grassroots organizations to government agencies to make this gap analysis and jointly prepare this roadmap for implementation. This is from the perspective of the first catalytic phase of Early Warning for All. We are also contributing with our disaster law to ensure that the legal frameworks and clear policies to facilitate and accelerate anticipatory action should be in place in each of these countries. And we are also contributing our national societies and IFRC to local, regional, and global coordination platforms, coordination groups, and we are together contributing to advocacy and resource mobilization efforts to ensure there will be enough flow of resources for the second phase, in particular the sustained action phase when we expect to implement all these roadmaps that we are developing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that perspective. I think it's very important to understand, the stakeholders that we're dealing with, but also sustainability is absolutely critical for the work that you do. And in my experience of attending a few national consultation workshops where IFRC are present, they really do deeply understand the communities that we're helping and supporting. So it's very valuable information, and it also feeds back into the beginning of the cycle, back to Pillar 1, to understand the risk knowledge. So we really value the work of the Red Cross at the international level, but also importantly at the national level. Now I'm going to loop back to another member country, Lao PDR. Because I'm also interested to hear a little bit more from their perspective, and I want to congratulate Lao PDR for finalising their roadmap just recently in the last few weeks. And they have received significant support from United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, but the thing that really stands out for me for Lao PDR is they were one of the first countries to put forward a representative from the National Meteorological Hydrological Service as the national focal point. So I'm interested to hear your perspective on that, but a specific question, because we've heard some insights from yourself in terms of the support from international partners and donors supporting Lao PDR. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the transboundary regional global initiatives such as CRUISE and SOFT that we've heard about, the mechanisms? What has proven helpful to you in Lao PDR in operating your multi-hazard early warning system to address the national challenges?
I would like to share with you about experience Lao PDR. Because Lao PDR initiative early warning for all, we are very young. During the UN General 2022, and then we work very close with the Ministry of Labor in Laos, and to roll out of the initiative early warning in Lao PDR, the government assigned the national focal point under the Department of Meteorology and Hydrology, under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. We learn a lot with foreign donor, and especially WMO and UNDRR, because we the aim to scale up period effort, strengthen national early warning in Lao PDR, and during the CRU project, we work with UNDRR and already organized workshop and capacity building in the local community. So we learn how to warn people in the remote area to access the data from the central level, national level, to the local district and village. Some area very poor road and remote area, they don't have mobile phone, and some area need speaker. It seems like we are lack of equipment, and the instrument not cover the whole countries. As you may know, Lao PDR very large area, and we have 80% of mountainous and also flood belong along the Mekong River to the downstream, and according to the topographic, we are hilly and slope, high slope, and flood from the up to down, and also we are the prompt action is the mandate of the meteorology and hydrology. We forecast data, meteorology and hydrology, but we use both automatic and manual to collect data, to access data. This early warning for all established opportunity for us to work with European, like we use a platform from the European already for flood and drought. And also we have all the very important and useful for us like MRC for flood and landslide. And before, Laopedia already done about platform like Laksa Lao Agriculture for weather and to inform the local community for agriculture. And I think that during the new for us like early warning for all in Laopedia already signed by my minister and UN resident in Laopedia can benefit from the reduction, disaster reduction. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that answer. And I think it's really highlighted the value of partnerships, both within the country but also from outside, where you're getting support from the UN system, but also international donors and technical support as well. And it's not so straightforward. And your country represents many challenges for you with its geography, topography, but it is apparent that you're trying very hard, and it's, I think, succeeding quite well to use the infrastructure you have available and developing apps for specific sectors like agriculture to support and protect livelihoods, but also protect your community. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best in implementing the roadmap. So we have one more panelist. Jyoti, I'm coming to you next with a question about, similar to IFRC, but I'm interested to understand your experience. Now, for those who are not familiar, World Food Programme has been very helpful. While it's not recognised as one of the 4 pillars, it's a very strong and active partner. And unlike WMO, WFP is a resident UN agency and so has presence in country. And so WFP in many cases has been designated as the UN focal point for a number of the focus countries in the Early Warnings for All initiative. So Jyoti, I'm interested to hear from you your perspective from WFP, just in terms of your experience in implementing or beginning the process of implementing early warnings for all across the region, especially through your country offices and working with the UN country teams. And what, from your perspective, what do you see as the value potential of the initiative, and also perhaps tell us a little bit more about the role and how do you see World Food Programme contributing to this initiative? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So from WFP, we are coming from the downstream side to the upstream. So our journey starts from the emergency preparedness and response at the community level. And we are increasingly working on anticipatory action. So we started a journey almost 10 years back in the region, and then we are close to 10 countries. So all these are critically dependent on early warning system. So when we start from the downstream side, we go from the pillar 4 to the upstream, like pillar 3, 2, 1. So wherever we see a gap and where there is an opportunity and where there is a role for us, so we start filling it, either through our in-house capacity or through the partnerships. So we don't do everything on our own. So if any specific technical expertise is required, so we depend on our partnerships to fill the gap. So, and as many of the discussion pointed out, the converting the early warning information into actions, so that's what we see a gap at the end user level, the last mile level. So we started working backwards in pillar 3, how to make communication more effective, the risk communication, and different vulnerability groups, because we don't focus a blanket approach. We have a gender lens, we have a disability inclusion lens. So because all our programs traditionally look at targeting for response, so we are just building on that, like how we can build a effective risk communication. And then we are also going upward, like we started working with, we started with Mr. Sochit traditionally, like the disaster management. And then now, for a few years, we started working very closely with MOREM and then with DMH in Laos. So on the upstream side, is there any capacity strengthening activities they need to fill the gap for translating the information? So that's where we bring in partners to support this initiative. And also, as I mentioned earlier, for the targeting and all, so we do a lot of surveys and conduct risk assessments, which also contributes to the pillar 1, the risk knowledge, which UNDRR is leading. So, so we were traditionally working across all the pillars and support wherever there is a gap. And for example, I can mention about the Cruise 1, which was there. So we were collaborating with UNDRR and then WMO on implementing the activities in Cambodia and Laopedia. So that's where our role is, like where there is a gap, an opportunity and role for us to play, either in-house or bring partnerships, so we do that. And on top of it, one is this technical part, and also on the resources side, WFP also sees a role, because our traditional climate finance programs also look at, even though it's more on the resilience adaptation, so we also have components on early warning. So some of the recent example is Pakistan, we have a early warning system, and then in Philippines, they mentioned about our collaboration on the people-centric multi-hazard early warning system. So we also play a role in bringing resources, adding up to the pool wherever it is possible, so we build the systems. So I stop here considering the time. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and it helps me to understand a little bit more about the mandate of the World Food Programme, focusing on food security. But what I liked about your intervention there was you're taking a different perspective and working upstream. And just anecdotally, whenever I'm lost, when I'm driving or walking, I often find if you go past the destination, you miss turn around, come back, you'll find it, because you'll see different signs and different opportunities. You should try it sometime. But no, seriously, it's good to hear that, because you're also bringing in different partners as well, and different opportunities to support the members. And of course, World Food Programme plays a very vital role in supporting communities and working with other partners. And nice to hear that you're also connecting to all the pillars. So a very valuable partner. I appreciate your ongoing support. So thank you. Look, in the interest of time, and I'm a very strict timekeeper, I'm going to hold back on some questions and allow the audience through the platform that we have in Pigeonhole to pose some questions to panelists. So we have a little bit of time for that. So I'm wondering if there are any that have come through so far, and if not, happy to take questions from the floor. Just looking around the room to see who's awake and who would like to ask a question of our esteemed panelists. Any Pigeonhole questions so far, or none? Perhaps we're all a little bit tired after a long day, and that's understandable. So I will just ask a question in that case, particularly of Laos and Cambodia. What would you like to share with the ASEAN member states who are thinking, what's the one thing that sticks in your mind as the great opportunity? Your experience from early warnings for, yes, it requires a lot of investment, hard work and coordination, that's all given, but it's worth doing. But what's the key takeaway from you? Either a sort of something to watch out for to help them, or something that is really beneficial that would entice a country in this region to join the initiative. Perhaps we'll start with you, Your Excellency.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. And I think that this is a good, I can share with you. So this is very important, because the early warning system for all need not only for nation, and also for regional and international, the global. So the role of the Asian, I think that we have shared experience. The important is data exchange. Data exchange is very important because the weather and climate not only the whole nation. So we look forward to the regional and the global. So this is the one point of my experiences. We need to share data, exchange data. This is very important because if you want to analyze the weather or climate, long, medium, and short, long, medium, you need to the data neighbor country, not only in nation. So in nation, not enough to analyze this, how the weather come from. As like the typhoon, we need to regional. And as like the climate prediction, the driver, we need from global. We need to understand the driver, which is driver catch up and in your country. Example, in my country, just under the CRU project, we learn from the climate driver, and we search that the El Nino impact is very important, the drought, as last year we have the El Nino, so we have our country, we have heavy drought, strong drought. This is, I can share you, so that is very important for not only for nation, for regional and for international, it's global. So thank you, this is my experiences.
That's
Yes.
a very good point, and it really amplifies what Professor Celeste Sala was saying. We need the data, we need to collect it first of all, so we need to have good observation networks and resilient ongoing maintenance to produce the data, but we need to share it, because if you share the data regionally and globally, you will benefit from this. This is the principle of WMO and how it operates. So thank you for highlighting. Over to you for a very, very short comment, and then we're going to close. Or
Yeah.
welcome. So perhaps we'll do ladies first, and then come
Okay.
to you, Sochit. Yeah.
It just like very one point that really want to put for the Asian is consideration is about using this as the hot agenda for Asian, because there are a lot of meeting in Asian. I've seen a lot, but it's look like the Asian platform can also advocate it to all member states to take this consideration. It's not just only share, but to receive. This is, we talking about no one is share, but sometimes when they share, they not receive. They are not using it. So this is something that really consider. Cross boundary is very important, but you have to open your heart to receive. You have to acknowledge that they are having a good thing to share with you. Thank you.
A very important point. Thank you for stepping in to highlight that, because it's not just about sending it, it's actually about accepting it and using it correctly. And we also need training, capacity building to make sure that this happens. So final comment from Dr. Virani, if you would like to. Just a quick comment on why you think early warnings for all is valuable, and if you can perhaps share with the other ASEAN members a good reason to join the initiative. Over to you.
About mechanism.
About just early warnings for all, what is good? Yes. Yes, on.
To share data. Actually, we have early warning system in Laopedia, and we have according to the role, and we have a national disaster committee. We share between the up to down, like vice prime minister until remote area by step as our Department of Meteorology and Hydrology as the center, national center, we send to the disaster preparedness, and also we disseminate to the television. We also have radio, television, and every day we disseminate about warning or notice to the remote area and community by notice document. Right now already situation now flood in Laos already last month, and we observe every day. For actually usually we collect data 3 times a day, but for the danger we have to collect by manual in the danger risk area by station, and we inform them by official letter notice to them. And for the international, like Vietnam center, also we contact together, and also we send to Bangkok, and like a system and network. Also we have a network with Korea also about predict analysis, meteorology and hydrology. Also we have Mekong MRC also for flood along the Mekong River, and but in the outside the Mekong we have to research, yes, and this is very important for us.
Thank you very much. I think the key words from this integration and coordination, and also really combining manual and automatic observations into a comprehensive system and delivering the forecast, but also taking note of key partners in the region, both neighbouring countries and also other institutions like Mekong River Commission, very important. So thank you very much, panellists. We are going to stop here, but we do have a few housekeeping announcements ahead of tomorrow. But before that, I would like you to put your hands together and thank our panellists for sharing their insights. Thank you.